Before Babylon became the empire that shook the world, before its kings conquered cities and carved their triumphs in stone, before its legends reached every corner of the ancient world, there was something far more human driving its rulers, things they could not resist, could not detach from, could not rule without. The kings of Babylon carried addictions that were not physical but psychological. Addictions that shaped their decisions, their fears, their obsessions, their nights, their kingdoms, and ultimately, their downfall. And today, inside the House of Babylon, we open the sealed door to those hidden cravings. If you're new here, subscribe now. What you're about to hear is something Babylon itself never wanted remembered. People often imagine kings as unbreakably untouched by emotion, untouched by weakness, untouched by the fragility that governs ordinary people. But Babylon understood something that still feels true today. The higher someone climbs, the more pressure crushes them. And pressure always looks for escape. Even kings cannot carry the weight of empires without finding something, some comfort, some ritual, some obsession to help them breathe. These were the addictions of Babylon, not substances, not forbidden pleasures, but deeper cravings. Control, prophecy, praise, certainty, and the illusion of immortality. The first addiction was omens. Babylonian rulers could not make decisions without the sky. They watched stars like desperate men reading their fate. They depended on priests to interpret shadows on walls, shapes in clouds, movements of birds, cracks in clay. It wasn't superstition. It was fear disguised as faith. A king held millions of lives in his hands. One wrong decision could burn the city or starve it. So rulers became addicted to answers the universe could never fully give. Every sunrise brought another question. What does the sky want today? This craving for certainty controlled kings more tightly than any enemy ever could. The second addiction was order. Babylonian life was structured to perfection: roads in straight lines, laws etched in stone, rituals repeated without fail. Kings believed that order was their shield against chaos, but order itself became their obsession. A single unexpected event, bad harvest, a sudden storm, a strange dream could send a ruler spiraling into fear. They needed things to stay predictable, but predictability is an illusion. And when kings tried to force the world into perfect lines, they discovered something terrible. Humans are not made of lines, they are made of change. The more Babylon's rulers fought against the unpredictable nature of life, the more fragile they became. The third addiction was praise. Every empire nourishes the ego of its leaders, but Babylon turned praise into a ritual. Scribes wrote poems calling the king chosen by the heavens. Sculptors carved his victories larger than life. Courtiers rehearsed compliments as if they were prayers. And slowly, praise became a requirement. A king needed to hear he was strong, wise, eternal every day. Praise became a shield for insecurity, a comfort for doubt. But when someone needs praise to feel powerful, they have already lost their power. Babylonian kings were surrounded by applause, yet starved of truth. And because no one dared tell them what they needed to hear, they walked into disasters convinced they were invincible. The fourth addiction was prophesy, the hunger to know the future. Babylonian kings built entire rooms filled with clay tablets, predicting everything from the weather to political threats. They kept astrologers beside them like shadows. They asked the same questions again and again, hoping for a different prediction. This wasn't curiosity, it was desperation. Being responsible for an empire forces the mind to carry endless fear. What if I fall? What if my name disappears? What if the gods abandon me? What if my enemies rise? Prophecy was comfort. Prophecy was security. Prophecy was the illusion that the future could be controlled. But the more they tried to know the future, the less they lived in the present. And no empire can survive a ruler who stops seeing the world in front of him. The fifth addiction was control. Babylonian kings did not fear enemies outside the walls as much as they feared those inside their own minds. To control others was easier than controlling the fear inside their hearts. So they tried to command everything: rituals, taxes, routes of trade, court politics, temple offerings, even how people prayed. But control is a sandcastle strong until the tides of life sweep in. The more they tightened their grip, the more pressure they created. The more pressure they created, the more unrest they sowed. The more unrest they sowed, the more they feared rebellion. And so their addiction fed itself like a cycle with no end. The sixth addiction was legacy. Kings feared being forgotten more than they feared death. They carved their names into bricks, statues, and tablets. They built monuments taller than memory itself. They waged wars not for land, but for history. They acted not as humans, but as characters in their own imagined legends. They wanted time to bow before them. But time bows to no one. In their obsession to be remembered forever, they forgot how to live. They turned into symbols before they turned into leaders. And symbols, unlike humans, cannot adapt, cannot change, cannot survive real-life pressure. The seventh addiction was flattery, disguised as loyalty. Everyone in the court wanted something, and the king was the key to everything. Ministers told him what he wanted to hear. Generals praised victories that did not exist. Courtiers exaggerated numbers, results, and omens. Kings knew they were surrounded by deception, yet they clung to it because it felt warm, comforting, easy. Truth is a sharp blade. Flattery is a soft pillow. And a tired king will always choose the pillow. But empires die when leaders prefer comfort over clarity. And then came the final addiction, the one that destroyed Babylon from within. The addiction to feeling irreplaceable. Babylonian rulers believed the empire could not breathe without them. They believed their decisions were divine, their power eternal, their role sacred. But no civilization survives a leader who cannot admit human limitations. When kings believed they were the destiny of Babylon, they stopped listening, stopped learning, stopped adapting, stopped seeing the people. And a ruler who stops seeing his people stops ruling long before he loses the throne. What makes these ancient addictions so haunting is that they still exist today. Not in kings or empires alone, but in all of us. We chase certainty. We seek praise. We cling to control. We fear being forgotten. We rely on flattery to protect us from uncomfortable truths. We crave order in a world built on chaos. Babylon teaches us something timeless. The greatest addictions are not the ones we hide. They are the ones we justify, the ones we turn into personality, the ones we mistake for strength. The kings of Babylon were powerful, brilliant, visionary, but deeply human. Their addictions did not make them evil. They made them relatable. They remind us that even the strongest among us carry silent battles in the mind. And in the end, it wasn't an invading army that broke them. It was the weight of their own inner world. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to House of Babylon. Every week, we reveal another hidden story, another truth the ancient tablets never dared to record. Your journey continues in the next episode. The shadows of Babylon are far from finished.